Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Today's the day. I've made up my mind, even though it's a little cooler outside than I'd have wanted, I still want this job done and I will deal with that. Best laid plans and all that must be subject to change. Anyway, what's going on today is we're going to have a go with our HotBox. Lynn got in touch with the manufacturer yesterday and had a long conversation on the telephone about all of our concerns, and all our fears were laid aside based on one thing: follow the instructions precisely. You know what men are like with instructions, but it's important. We've got a chemical involved here that, if you don't get the use of this correct, will produce a toxic fume. If you do it properly, it doesn't. So it's quite a simple on and off thing here, and it's all based on this cup having, let me put this down, this cup has a line on it, and we put this stuff in up to that line. That sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? Yeah, well, you're going to get people think, oh, I'll fill it up, or I'll only use a little bit because I want to see how it works. It says fill it up to the line. It's important. So we'll get that bit done. And then the next important bit is that heating plate. That heating plate is dead flat. It is designed to make contact with the bottom of the cup completely, not half cocked, not touching in one place and not in another, but making contact completely. So if that's damaged or dented or anything, it's not going to work properly. And then what happens is the unit gets turned on and the heating, thermostatically controlled heater, heats that plate up. That plate is in direct contact with the cup, which is centrally located, using the lugs to hold it in place. No damage, no bent bits. It will then, at I think it's around 120 degrees C, which it doesn't take long to heat up to, it melts the sulphur and turns it into a liquid. Yeah? Doesn't set fire to it, it doesn't burn it. It simply melts it. And then the way this unit works is wherever you get heat, hot air rises, doesn't it? It forms a funnel around that heat plate and the cup. So the warm air, the cool air, is drawn in the bottom and effectively blown out in a column because you've narrowed it. So the amount of air that can get in is bigger than the amount of air that can come out through that more narrow gap. So it pushes it out. And that forms a funnel effect, which is why this has to be hung at least a metre from what you are hanging it from to allow the space above it to work properly and form a column of air containing the fumes off of the liquid sulphur, which then spread around the room, being drawn in. Yeah, that's how it works. And problem number one was the door to the lounge. I was talking to Lynn on the phone. It still didn't dawn on me yesterday when I was talking on the phone. But obviously I need the door to the lounge to be shut properly to stop all the fumes coming into the house and keep them in here where they're supposed to be doing the job. I thought, that's all right. What I plan on doing is I'll take the cable out. This is the reason the door doesn't shut properly, because of the cable. Then I can shut the door properly. Flaw in the plan number one. The cable is what gets the power out here. So what am I going to plug this into then if I've just removed my extension lead? So an adapted plan, we will have to leave the extension cable through the door, but I will tape the door up with parcel tape basically, which sticks strong where it touches. So basically I'll seal the door the gap in the door that's going to be left by the cable coming out here. Because the next part of the plan is to leave it to do its job for 2 or 3 hours, and then once once the job is done, it says while it's running, no electrical units, so no fans, no heaters, nothing that could potentially produce a spark by being switched on and off, because that stuff's flammable. So no electrical units on except for the unit itself. But eventually, when it's done its job and this place is full of those fumes, I've got to get those fumes out. Well, I have a window and a door. That's why I needed a mild day, so that when I open those I don't freeze the socks off my orchids. Yeah, that makes sense. So temperature outside today is said to be around 10 to 12 degrees. So that's a little cooler than I would like. But if I open the window and the door, it's going to take a while to clear the air. It will clear an awful lot faster if I turned the circulating fan on, because that will blast the air from the rear out through the door. Another reason for having the extension lead. And what I will have to do is, because I won't want to unseal the door until the air is clear in here, or as clear as it can be, I'll have to go round and come in through this door to turn the fan on. And as it won't take long to change the air in here with that big fan running. And while it's running and the door's open, if I leave the heater connected, I'll be replacing some of the cooler air with heat air. Now that's not efficient, but it's better than the colder air that's going to come in to replace the fumes going out. So that's the plan. It's going to take a while, therefore this video will be in bits. The first problem, not the door, the first problem is we haven't got anything to hang it on. Now my plan, hang on, I'll show you, because I won't be able to film all of this. I have quite a lot of these, and there is a lip on the wall all the way round that will hook onto. So if I hook one that side and one that side, I can run a wire across, because it does specifically say you should hang it on something like a chain, bearing in mind there's going to be a lot of heat coming out the top, so a piece of string might not be the best idea in case it overheats and perhaps catches fire. There's a lot of heat involved here. It's going to go up to 120 degrees centigrade, yeah, so well past the boiling point of water. Probably not enough to self-light a piece of string, but anyway. So if I run a piece of my bonsai wire across, I can get my tape measure, yeah, and put my finger on the wire and pull it, and measure it with the tape measure to make sure it says at least 1 metre away from wherever you hang it from, the roof. The idea being that it allows that column of air to get up and distribute. So I can use a tape measure, and it should end up about here in the middle of the room basically. I'll move the hanging racks right back so that they're not anywhere near the heater, because that unit sounds like it's going to get quite warm. Not ridiculously warm. I mean, if you've just boiled your kettle, the outside of the kettle's at 100 degrees, isn't it? It's got boiling water in it. Well, it's only 20 degrees more. It's not ridiculously hot. Probably take your skin off if you touch it though. I don't plan on touching it because I won't be here. So yeah, that's the plan. Get a wire up, make sure I measure it to make sure it's the right distance, get the plants out of the way, and then basically I will have to seal the door and then do everything from in here and coming in and out of this door, so that once that door's sealed up, it stays sealed up until the whole job is finished and the air has been refreshed. So that's the plan, quite detailed. As I said, it started the day without the need for adjustment until I picked this up and I thought, where are we going to put that then if we've just taken the extension lead out? And then, you know, I further thought along the lines, and you know, I'm going to need power for the circulating fan to clear the air out, so I still need the power in here. So that's the idea of sealing the door and then doing everything out here afterwards through this door until eventually it's all done. And Lynn, having chatted with the manufacturer, is now confident enough to check over the one she's already got that she just put to one side. No, I'm not using that. Basically it sounded like when she first used it, the instructions weren't followed closely enough and she got a residual over all of her plants and it didn't seem to work. So she put it to one side and hasn't used it since. She's now confident enough that she's gone and bought a second one. So she's got one for each part, because she's got a long greenhouse with a separation bit with the door. So, you know, one's warm, one's intermediate, and then her cooler one's a separate thing. So she's bought another one. So she's now got two. That's confidence. I've only got one, I only need one, and I will have a lot more confidence in it at the end of this day. Rather than at the start of this day where it's a bit... You can only try these things, can't you? And Jeff at whatever his channel's called, I keep forgetting, 53 Degrees North or something like that, he's absolutely swearing by the thing. And you know, he said he's got plants that never did that well that are suddenly doing better. Two reasons: he detected that he had mites, they're gone, and secondly, there is some sulphur being added into his plants which does them apparently the world of good. And it is something that I've just noticed. I'll add this on here as a talking point, but I will talk about it on Sunday probably. Changing to the K-Lite fertiliser, so that virtually removed the P and the K, NPK, yeah? Still had calcium and magnesium in, but the P and the K were effectively removed down to an incredibly low level. Compared with the MSU, where the P had been reduced to half and the K was still a bit higher than the nitrogen. So that was the MSU sort of equivalent. And there's a main and potential problem there with the K-Lite, because sulphur goes in with calcium and magnesium nowadays. The science has actually said that needs to be there. Now in the MSU formula it's not mentioned, but quite a few of the elements that go into that are sulfates, so the sulphur's there indirectly. You take the P and the K out of the K-Lite, I've got a feeling that sulphur's dropped right down. Yeah? So a discussion point. But anyway, maybe this will put some back in, and we'll see how we go. So that's the plan for the day. I'll film little bits of it to add on, and there's no point in having a look round at the results at the end of the day because we won't be able to see them. I mean, the mites are virtually invisible, can only see them with my magnifying glass. But I will be checking that those have ceased to move, shall we say, i.e. brown bread. And it should deal with possibly the scale, fingers crossed. It will definitely deal with the mealybugs, it will deal with aphids, and it will deal with the mites. And it deals with moulds and rots and funguses. So it's not just the bugs, it's cleaning the whole place up basically. So let's get on with it. Right, phase one. That didn't take long. We have our required amount in the cup up to the line as it says. So that's that bit done. I fixed a hook up there with a wire on over to there. Both ends are nice and secure because, believe it or not, this is quite heavy and its weight is increased by having the wire hanging down. Believe it or not. So that's ready to go. All I've got to do is plug it in. But when I plug it in, it will start working. So I can't plug it in until I'm ready. So phase one, wiring that in place. I've measured it. A metre is about there from the roof. And it says make sure it's at least a metre. So we are greater than a metre. So we've done that bit. So everything so far exactly as per instructions. The next job is to basically seal the door. And then once I've sealed the door, I'll come round the outside of the house and come in here and switch it all on and get out. And then it's got to sit there for possibly as much as 3 or 4 hours. I'll read up again, but it says the initial time that you have it on, depending on what you're trying to do, depending on if it's an infestation, then you could possibly leave it on for 8 hours, you know. But I haven't got an infestation, I've got some stuff. So I'm planning on leaving it on for somewhere between 3 and 4 hours. If the cats decide they want to go out during that time, they can't. It'll be as though they're shut in all night. So it's, you know, it's not a big deal for them. They'll live. We might have some cleaning up to do out near the litter tray, but we'll live with that. I have to live with it overnight. So there we go. Seal the door up, come round, put the cup in place, turn it on, and like a firework, light blue touch paper, metaphorically, and run like hell. And then it'll just stay in here and do its job. I would imagine there would be nothing to see, because I would imagine that the fumes that it gives off are probably invisible. So I won't even know if it's working. There's no light to say it's on, you just have to trust it. If I come in 3 or 4 hours later and there's no smell, then we know it didn't work. Anyway, so we will get it going, and I'll film again as I come round and switch it on, and then we'll leave it running. Right, phase 2, door sealed. That won't be an airtight seal, but it'll be pretty damn close, quite honestly. That tape's quite sticky and it's stuck to the glass and the frame, therefore sealing the joint. I wasn't going to do along the bottom, but I thought, I'm here, I've got the tape in my hand. The only possible leaky bits are the 2 bits here where the locks are, that one, and again where the bottom lock and the cable go through. But if there is a little bit of air that can get through there, it will be tiny, you know, compared with if I hadn't done it, let's put it that way. So that's phase 2 done. I'm out of breath doing all that. Right, phase 3, we turn it on and walk away. The only potential problem as I see it, which shouldn't happen because we're up to 15, 16 degrees in here at the moment, is if the heater and the fan switch on, I've got them covered up at the moment. It's an excessive precaution that isn't necessary, because if this is used properly, it says it doesn't leave a residue. But if it did, I don't want it getting inside my electrical units. You see what I mean? So I've covered them. The problem with that is they could turn themselves on. So what I plan on doing is unplugging. Basically the units are plugged into that extension lead which runs off of here. Yeah? So if I unplug this, then the heater and the fan can't come on. But I will have to put the camera down to do that because it's stiff and it's a two-handed job. And then when I come back in, I will be plugging that back in along with the unit. So that's all off, can't come on now. What else is under there? The dehumidifier and the air purifier are both plugged in, but have a manual switch. They have to be physically turned on, so they can't come on, so they're okay. So we then have to put this in the middle, lined up with the lugs. Make sure it's sitting nicely flat on the plate, and we then plug it in. Now I've just reread the pamphlet on this, and if this unit is used properly, the fumes that are given off are not poisonous to man. They're not going to do you a lot of good, but you ain't going to drop dead if you take a gulp, if you see what I mean. So I'd like to stay in here long enough to feel this unit getting warm. Then I know it's all working. So we'll plug it in, and if it fires up quickly by taking a deep breath, I should be okay anyway, shouldn't I? That's the plan anyway. Right, so we plug it in. Have a quick look on the bottom. No, there isn't a switch on there. Jolly good. So in theory, this is now on. Yeah, the thing I don't like about it is the wire is pulling it and then bending it a bit. So I'm just going to move the extension lead closer. Nothing's ever easy, is it? So that the wire hangs vertically. That's better. Now, have we got any heat yet? I suppose if the plate gets hot, the unit might not get that hot. It's possible, isn't it? I just don't like the fact that that isn't vertical. And it's all to do with the kinks in the wire. Let's see if we can just unbend the kinks. This is always the way with heavy duty cable when it's coiled for transport and then it doesn't uncoil itself. That's better. I just wanted that to be more flat. Well, I don't feel any heat yet. But I am getting a slight whiff. It's supposed to be very low energy as well. It's supposed to, it runs up to 100 watts to bring the plate up to temperature, and then it kicks on and off at around 40 watts. And it's only going to be on, well, I'm planning on somewhere around 3 to 4 hours. That's my theory. It would be nice to be able to see some fumes coming off, because otherwise, you see what I'm getting at? I don't know whether it's even on. Because it hasn't got an on-off switch, it's just, you just plug it in and it starts working. I wonder if there's anything you can see. I wonder if you can see something getting hot. I doubt it, 'cause it doesn't get that hot. No. It could do with a light. It could do with a light to say it's on. Design flaw. Ah, I've just put my hand over the top and I can feel the heat. And if you look round the edge of the little cup, you can see the sulphur starting to melt. You can see it changing colour. So it's working. Right, let's get out. Right, so we're back to, well, let me just turn the noise off. Ugh. It's just a matter of adjusting the thermostat down, back down to where it goes normally. It should shut down. And there was silence. Right, this exercise has very little way of proving that it's worked, unfortunately. a lot of the things we've been hoping that are now brown bread with their toes in the air are too small to see. And those that are visible to see, I mean, what am I supposed to do? Go around and poke them with a stick and see if they still move? You see what I mean? It's difficult to establish whether it's done the job. It's the same with the sort of fungus and mould and spores and things like that. Well, you can't see them, so you don't know whether they're gone or not. So it's one of those things, there's quite a serious element of trust involved. Now, reading up on this ran for just under 4 hours, nearly 4 hours. And quite honestly, this room vented very quickly with that fan on full. Yeah, it soon, and the smell is virtually gone already. There was a very, very slight smell in the lounge, which meant there was obviously a tiny bit of leakage, but it was minor, and it's just something I've got to put up with. The downside is this has got to be repeated on a relatively regular basis. The problem with that is taping up the door every flipping time. But there's a way of telling that this did its job. I'll just get the, says cooled down, yeah. Is that the sulphur completely melted. And what happens is it sets. Now, this will need topping up next time, because where it's melted, it's dropped down, you know, below where it's supposed to be. So I will top it up so that when it melts again, when it resets, I'd like it near the line to stick with the instructions. But that shows it did its job, it melted it, yeah? And then it becomes a liquid and evaporates off due to the heat, and the air coming up through the tunnel effect all round this cup disperses it into the room. You can tell, one way of telling it worked is the humidity went up from 65 to 92. So obviously it was giving off a lot of moisture, so there was a fair bit of evaporation going on. So it worked as far as the function of the unit is concerned. Whether it's done its job, we will have to wait and see. Simple as that. And it needs regular use, so we'll have to buy a couple of reels of that tape, I think. It didn't take long to tape up the door, I must admit, and the more I do it, the more practiced I'll get. You know, it'll just take a couple of minutes, sort of thing. The downside is obviously, you know, the cat's losing access to the garden. But by doing it during the day, they sleep up on my bed most of the day. I mean, Elvis came down about 20 minutes ago, jumped up on the table, had a bit of a fuss, went out and had something to eat, and he's in his basket going to sleep again now. He didn't even want to go out. Mojo had an accident because he came down a couple of hours ago and obviously wanted to go out and couldn't, so he went indoors. That's something I'll have to put up with. It happens overnight, you know, so it's no big deal. I'll live with it, as I have to do. You know, that's one of the consequences of coming to a place with no cat flap and no ability to put one in. This, I'm going to try and work out a way of not having to take this down each time. But what that involves is putting it up there somewhere and getting it to stay there, which I might be able to do. If I put a hook at the top up there with a short piece of wire on with a hook, I could just lift that up onto the hook and then just lift it down again. In which case it can stay there, you know, relatively permanently. So there we go. No way of really telling absolutely that this has been a success. But the unit's worked in the way described. It's sort of done what it was supposed to do. And I've read lots of write-ups that say it's done wonders for their plants, in as much as, you know, it's solved a lot of the bug issues and mould issues and all that sort of stuff. It doesn't solve my temperature issues. Yeah. But we'll be having a chat about that on Sunday. I've got a couple of things on Sunday to talk over that are quite serious, quite major changes really. I'm a bit worried about it, but I'll talk it out. That's often the best way when you're worried about something, is talk it out, say it out loud. And I might change my mind halfway through, bottle out. But yeah, changes afloat, as they say. Anyway, that probably isn't interesting to that many people, but split up into sections like that, it shows the process of using this in here during the daytime. Now that I've actually used it, I'd be relatively okay with running it overnight. In other words, start it in the evening and then, you know, run around the outside and just turn it off and leave it. You know, leave the fumes in here all night long, and then when I get up in the morning, vent the place. Problem with that is I'd be venting the place at the coldest point, you know, sort of 5 o'clock in the morning, which means I'm going to let an icy blast in. So I'll probably end up having to stick to doing it during the daytime when, you know, venting it is not too much of a big deal because the outside temperature is not ridiculously low. And at the moment we've at least got some mild days in the foreseeable future, which gives me a chance to use this frequently and hopefully get everything sorted out. And then we'll use it now and again when the weather's suitable. Anyway, see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.